I have with me Chadwick Moore, and he is a New York Times bestselling author, journalist, and contributing editor at the Spectator. Chadwick appeared on numerous Fox News programs and was a regular guest on the Tucker Carlson Tonight. He has a brand new book called Tucker, and this is amazing for me. A biography of Tucker Carlson is available now, and we're going to tell you how to get that. Amazing book, Tucker. And for the folks, here's a copy of it. Here's what it looks like while they're doing that. Chad, what made you decide to write about Tucker?
Well, I don't think there's a lot of cable news hosts out there that you necessarily want to read a biography of, or maybe many I'd want to write one about. But I always knew that Tucker was, a much more interesting and deep guy than perhaps he gets credit for. And he's someone who's so consistently portrayed in kind of two-dimensional terms in the media, whether it's, a person of great evil and hate, or even someone who's, celebrated as this kind of godlike messenger for the right. And I really wanted to just get to know him as a human being and a person, and find out what motivates him, what makes him tick, and what he's like off camera, and also explore what his role is in our culture and our national political discourse. I really dug into his not only his life but his father and his ancestors, going back many years, to kind of figure out where he came from and what he's really about, and kind of paint a portrait of a man that is so influential and important in our national conversation.
Yeah. I want to get into some of the things you talk about in the book. But once it was all said and done, you were done with the interview, talking to him or whatever, what did you walk away thinking or knowing about Tucker? How were you influenced by it?
He's someone that doesn't really, and I think this is kind of one of his two or three major political ideological shifts over his lifetime, is that he's someone who doesn't necessarily really care about politics per se. He's much more concerned with the bigger questions of morality, of family, of faith, of beauty. And he sees those things as integral to politics. But he's not someone who's a point scorer. He's not someone who just, something he hates more than anything is someone who just parrots party line talking points without thinking more deeply about the questions. And I think that's something that really motivates him. He's an extremely literary guy, a very thoughtful guy, but he's certainly more interested in these much bigger questions, and I think most people would understand or give him credit for.
Yeah, I totally have that same impression of him. When he was on Fox News, his show was just amazing. I would watch his show, and once I was done with that was it for today. I didn't need any more, because he seemed to be so wise in the book. And I personally believe that all of our issues starts in the home first. And if our parents are not right in the way that they deal with life and the way they handle us or the children, that it can really have a negative impact on our lives. And then we have to spend our whole rest of the life trying to overcome that. You write about Tucker Carlson's mother and their relationship. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, and I agree with you. And Tucker is sort of a great example of that. He came from a really long line of abandonment and dysfunction, not just in his own family, but his father and his father before that. And Tucker's mother was this California heiress. She was from one of the richest families in San Francisco, but she abandoned her family when Tucker was 6 years old. She just decided she wanted to be this kind of art world groupie. She fell in with drugs and alcohol. She kind of was this kind of, fixture on the art scene in Los Angeles, and hanging on to men who were much more famous than she was. And she just decided she wanted to be a mom. It wasn't for her, so she left. And so Tucker never saw her again since he was 6 years old.
Wow.
She died in 2011 from cancer. He didn't go to the funeral, but he was left with his father to raise him and his younger brother, Buckley. And yeah, I can really see that Tucker's own father was an orphan. And he was adopted when he was a child. His own father, so Tucker's biological grandfather, killed himself when he was 19 years old. And I really saw the lengths at which Tucker goes to reset that lineage of dysfunction in his family. He met his wife Susie when they were in high school. They're 15 years old. They've been together ever since. He's got 4 children. And their marriage is. I got to meet Susie and get to know her really well, and you can tell that they have an extremely strong marriage, and they're very much in love with each other. And that's the most important thing in his life is his wife and his children and his
Yeah.
family.
So Tucker father and mother were never married?
They were married.
Oh, they were married.
And
And she just decided one day she wanted to walk away from the family?
yeah, she just totally left. And in fact, she then wanted custody. After a couple of years, she wanted custody of the kids, and they went to court, and she just didn't even show up for her own hearing to custody hearing. So the judge just awarded full custody to the children, to the father. Sorry, Dick Carlson, Tucker's dad.
Right. And did Tucker had one brother? Did he have any sisters? I thought
No, just the one brother.
just one brother. And so, personally, when his mother walked away like that, growing up not being with her, was he traumatized by that at all?
Well, I kind of, he says he has a really positive outlook on it. He says that he feels fortunate because he could have grown up in the same house as a crazy woman,
Yeah.
and who knows what that would have done with him. So in a way, he feels fortunate that he didn't have to live in the same household with this woman. And he, kind of says it doesn't really affect him. His wife Susie, she says, it has to affect him in some way. But he seems to think that he was lucky that didn't have to happen. She did in the course of his life try to reach out to him once or twice. She called, and he was she was drunk when she called, and Tucker just said, if you want to talk to me, call me back when you're sober. She never did. He did write her a letter when he proposed to Susie, just to say basically I forgive you, and that was sort of his closure with that. Yeah.
So when she expired, I read that he didn't go to the funeral or anything, right?
Yeah, that's right. In typical fashion, Tucker's father, Dick Carlson, they were moving boxes one day into it for a charity event, and Dick just kind of said to his brothers, "Oh yeah, Lisa died today," which is the mother's name, and that was sort of, it was like he was commenting on the weather, and that was sort of it. That's how they found out.
Wow. And
Yeah.
what was his relationship with his father?
So they're extremely close, and they still are to this day. They talk every single day, and I got to know his father really well. He's a great man and really interesting guy as well. Deserves a book of his own. And he was a journalist. He was a local TV news anchor for most of the time when Tucker was growing up out in California. And Tucker became a journalist because that's what his dad did, for the most medieval of reasons. And Tucker and his dad are really similar in a lot of ways. And he's a really, really fascinating guy. And, had a very interesting parenting style growing up. He kind of let the boys do whatever they wanted. And, there's some really funny stories of them growing up. So yeah, they're still very close to this day.
I have always said that if kids had to make a choice with which parent to live with, to grow up with, I've always felt it's better for the boys and the girls to be raised by the father, because the father tend to be more stable-minded emotionally, and they tend to, know how to raise the kids without all that emotional stuff being involved.
Yeah, I can for sure see that. Certainly in Tucker's case, that's for sure the what happened. And his dad seems to have been, really great father and a really stable force in their life.
Nice. How's his brother doing?
He's good. He's a good guy. He's interesting too. Both the boys and their dad are all really similar. Same sense of humor, same politics, and also a kind of deep hatred of the nanny state and being told what to do by government and other forces like that.
Yeah.
He's also married, has kids as well.
I noticed that as Tucker Carlson, when he was doing his show there on Fox News, I noticed over the years he started to grow mentally or in wisdom. And I knew that because he became so upfront with what was happening in the world, and he would lay it out and just show it to us as to what was going on. And I knew that once he started doing that, he wasn't going to last that long. That they would, whatever happened, but they would get rid of him. And I saw the same thing happen with Bill O'Reilly. Why is it that it seems that people who own the media don't want people around who are just going to give the public the truth about situations in their country and around the world. What is up with all that?
It's so true. And I think that when Fox gave Tucker that prime 8 p.m. time slot, I think they probably assumed he was this kind of country club Republican. You know, he had the bow tie years. He was on CNN forever. And I sort of thought they figured he would just kind of toe the party line more closely than he did. And Tucker was the first to tell me that no one at Fox ever told him, you know, what he could say or what he couldn't say. He didn't have to get anything approved. All those monologues that he was so famous for, that's all him. He wrote them all himself. You know, he is a writer first. He is sort of a television performer secondly. And he was always really grateful for that. But of course, as you said, I think all of us knew we would watch his show and think there's no way they're going to let this continue for much longer.
Yeah.
I just don't think we knew it happened so abruptly and in the way that it did, and under such mysterious circumstances where they didn't, you know, with Bill O'Reilly, they, you know, pointed to some accusations that, you know, might seem flimsy to a lot of people.
Yeah.
But with Tucker, he just disappeared, and they're fine to let us speculate. And I think you're right that, you know, corporate media, they're all in the same bed together. It was always sort of funny watching Fox and watching some people on there. I haven't watched it since April when the show's taken off the air, but they'll still rail against the mainstream media. And you're like, well, you are the mainstream media.
Right.
You know, you're kind of the definition of it. There were several issues that Tucker really pushed the needle on and really went against the grain, even against people on Fox, a lot of them being the war in Ukraine, vaccines, January 6th. He was really digging into this stuff and was an outlier on for most of all of cable and most of Fox News shows. And I think that we just see, I mean, what happened to him was, if you need any more evidence that the corporate media is not on your side, that's what it is. They took away their ratings juggernaut, and, you know, they sort of misjudged, I think, the fact that Tucker Carlson had become a brand more powerful, as powerful, if not more powerful than the entire network. He was a political movement. And I don't think that the executives at Fox really considered that. I think that they just figured he would disappear and they'd be fine in a week and things would go on. But he certainly was upsetting a lot of people. A lot of people, when they call themselves conservatives, you know, the conservative establishment is certainly on the board of Fox News. And the left may have hated Tucker Carlson, but the conservative establishment really, or maybe I just say Republican establishment, really feared him.
Yeah.
They didn't really want to have to respond to what he was saying on air to millions of people every night.
You know, I remember when they took Bill O'Reilly off, and Bill O'Reilly had the same impact on the public. He really put the information out there. And I wonder, who will they find to replace a person like Bill O'Reilly, you know, was, I mean, just a force to be reckoned with, right? And then they found Tucker. Tucker showed up, and I'm like, a perfect find. It was just absolutely a perfect fit. So knowing that the quote-unquote conservative media is now no different than the liberal media, what are the people supposed to do when they really want to know the truth about what's really going on in the country?
Well, I think it's turning into shows like yours. It's, you know, Tucker Carlson has become this figurehead of, I think, independent media eclipsing mainstream media. You know, so few people are now watching mainstream media, and everyone's coming to podcasts, to talk radio, to social media to get their news and information. And a lot of that, I think, also has to do with, you know, people want a relationship with the person who's talking to them about the news. And, you know, you get that through podcasts and through radio. And Tucker had that with his audience. People felt they were speaking directly to him. You know, there's so much artifice in cable news. There's so many bells and whistles and, you know, these nipped and tucked people reading from teleprompters and scripts. and Tucker felt differently. Watching his show, he felt like he was being honest. And in that way, he was always a kind of bridge between new media and establishment media. He was reporting on things that people were talking about on the internet, that they were talking about on podcasts, while everyone else on Fox was just reporting on what the New York Times was talking about. And so I think that we're seeing this growing, and, you know, it's not going to happen overnight, but certainly I don't think Fox is ever going to recover from this. They had really done a lot of things to alienate their audience leading up to this. And I think a lot of people continue to give them a pass because they had Tucker on. So, you know, they may have called Arizona too early, but they still have this guy Tucker on. I guess they can't be that bad. And now what do they have?
Do they not care that the public see what they're doing, and as a result, they're going to lose a lot of the audience? They don't care about that?
I don't think they do. I mean, I think it's a kind of twofold situation of and this is what people who work at Fox continue to tell me, is that the executives, literally, they're just very, very stupid people. and they're really disconnected from their audience. Fox has always seen itself as it's the brand that matters. The faces don't matter. We are Fox. We can do anything we want. Everyone's going to watch us no matter what. But they've failed to, I think, judge the changing media landscape and the fact that, as we mentioned earlier, that Tucker had become a political movement in his own right.
Yeah.
And I don't think they care. I think they look down on their audience. And a lot of these companies have controlling interests in Fox. They probably look at their bottom line as this is fine and negotiable. I mean, Fox's website still gets 120 million views a month or something like that. So they're not hurting by any means. But they wanted his voice silenced. They didn't want that voice out there in mainstream media, and they want to be able to control who gets the nomination for the Republican candidacy for president. I mean, that's the most important job in the world, and people will certainly shoot themselves in the foot if they think it'll help them have a decision in who gets that job.
Let me take a quick break, Chadwick, and I'll be right back. 888-7753-773. I need to take a quick break, folks. I'll be right back. The book is called Tucker. It's a must-read. Really, really, I highly recommend it. Everybody and their mama. I really want to encourage you to get this book, Tucker. I like books like this. I love books like this because, especially when it's about men who have set perfect examples of how to deal with life and the things they go through, how they tend to overcome it, and you never really see them whining and complaining and, oh, pitiful me, and all that kind of stuff. So I highly recommend you get Tucker, all right? I'm talking with Chadwick Moore. He's the author of this book. Chadwick, I want to ask you, in your book on page 96 on wisdom, it's a quote from Tucker. Tucker said that, to me, it's the beginning of wisdom, realizing the limits of wisdom and the limits of your understanding and the limits of what's knowable and all that. What did you get from that?
Yeah, that was and it was a great quote. I mean, that's a good kind of synopsis of how he thinks and who he is. And he was sort of talking about, the older he gets, the realizes the less he knows. And that's kind of the beginning of wisdom. And how, he's looking at these people who like and admire him, who he never thought he'd be on the same side as, even like feminists like Naomi Wolf and people like that. And he's just saying the older I get, the more I learn about the world, the more I realize I don't understand it. And you have to be comfortable with that. And that's the beginning of wisdom.
That is so deep and so true. When you realize, as human beings, when we realize what we don't know, then we begin to understand. Wisdom will come, but as long as we think that we know what we know, we're walking around in the dark, not knowing anything. We're on an ego trip, not really realizing how blind we are.
Yeah, for sure. And he, goes through great lengths to remain humble, and to not let everything go to his head. He doesn't read anything about himself. They don't have TVs in the house. His wife's never seen the show, but she would read his monologues every day before he sent them off to his producers. So they really kind of protect themselves. And you can tell that he said to me, one of my favorite parts in the book is he said to me, this job, like being a cable news host is basically I'm God. I'm right. You're wrong. I'm telling you how the world is. That's the job description. And if you don't act like that on TV, you don't have a career. Yeah. But he knows that that's not true. And so when, the camera goes off every night, he, likes to look at the stars, as simple as that might sound, but just to remind himself how small he is and how he's no different than any other person who ever lived. And he's not God, and he doesn't have all the answers. A lot of people on TV aren't like that. The ego seems to go to their heads.
That is so true, man. And one other I want to ask you about on page 211 on evil spirits. I thought that was really deep too. Tucker says, it's impossible to rationally explain the irrational desire that comes over all people at certain points to destroy. What is that? Why is this inside of you? Because there is a force acting on you from the outside. Obviously, evil spirits, good spirits, all this stuff we dismiss are untrue. It is true that human beings are being controlled by evil spirits, and they don't know it because they never really, not all, but most, they never really get to know themselves, and they think that they are in control. They are doing this when something else is driving them that's not them.
Yeah, definitely. And Tucker's been sober for over 30 years. And, we're talking a lot about sobriety and about, he used to be friends with Hunter Biden. And he was saying, he was using Hunter Biden as an example of this sort of these evil forces outside you. Like, what drives a person to humiliate themselves and their family and their father like this and to behave in this way? And addiction is a really good example of that. Why are some people driven to destroy themselves? And it's evil. It's some outside force working on you. Is the only way he can rationalize that, and he sees that all around. In our modern age, we are told that we have to pretend this doesn't exist, and everything is explained by science and chemicals, and chemicals are also the solution to these problems. But sometimes this ancient wisdom that we've had for thousands of years until very recently is probably correct when you're thinking of things like that.
Do you believe that there is good and evil spirits operating through us and also outside of us, inside of others?
I do. And even, speaking with him, it was nice to hear him talk about that stuff because it was good to hear someone say that. I completely believe that.
And you're right. Most of the world don't understand that anymore. When I was growing up, it was understood that our battle was a spiritual battle. It's not a physical battle. It has nothing to do with color. It has nothing to do with male or female. It is something that's driving us. And we can overcome those evil spirits and operate from good, which is of God, if we were to pay attention to ourselves to overcome it. I want to ask, I've been seeing because of this war in Israel, with Israel and Palestine, I see American people joining sides and fighting one another. The kids are fighting each other in the universities. Why? It seems as though they'll just follow some instructions without knowing why they are doing this, because it doesn't make sense that they're fighting one another over a war that they have nothing to do with, and nor will they gain anything from it. What do you think about all that?
Yeah, I like you said that they're following instructions because these people who are now demanding a ceasefire and they're pretending that they're pro-peace activists. Well, I didn't see them demanding a ceasefire with Ukraine. The instructions didn't go out with Ukraine to storm the Capitol and demand peace, but it did in this situation. It's weird. It's like someone flipped a switch and sent out the troops, and they're all just blindly. But also, a lot of us knew that BLM and a lot of these groups were always super pro Hamas and they hate Israel but the level at which they're so brazen about it now, particularly what happened, is really surprising. And we're seeing cancel culture kind of come for some of them now, but it doesn't seem like it's going to be enough, and it doesn't seem like they necessarily really care.
I was thinking this morning as I'm watching some of this stuff happen, it looked like, and I could be wrong, but it looked like there is a war upon the white race, whether it's white people or white Jews, and that the people of color have joined forces because they've been so brainwashed over the years that the white people and the Jews are against them, whatever they say, right? And it looked like the people of color have joined forces together to go and just completely wipe out the white race and the Jewish race. It seemed to be more about that, because I don't really know what's going on way up there, but it seemed to be more about getting rid of white people and Jewish people than anything else.
Well, yeah, so much of it seems like it's a politics of vengeance,
right?
And retribution. That's what it seems like it's always been. And it's so funny to see, especially like these white liberals, because it's the ones who are joining in on this. It's like they hold. It's a really racist way of thinking because they hold certain groups based on their skin color, where they live, to different moral standards than they hold themselves.
Yeah.
Or, Israel is held to much higher moral standards than Hamas and the Palestinians. Or white Americans held to much higher moral standards than inner city black people. And why is that? It's like, it's a way of looking down on certain people and saying, well, they're just not capable of this. They're not as civilized or evolved as us, so we have to treat them differently and coddle them and be custodians of these people rather than holding everyone to the same standards that they hold themselves to.
As a white man, how concerned are you about what's happening to the white race?
I mean, I fundamentally believe in the goodness of all people, and I think that there's there's a lot of these horrible actors out there and these agitators. But when you watch the news and you see this stuff on social media, these protests, it looks horrible. But then you go out into the world and you interact with people, and you understand that people of all colors are fundamentally good people. I think, so I think that it's I'm not walking down the street worried about X, Y, or Z necessarily. But I think it's a small percentage of people who are driving this. But as we've seen throughout history, it only takes 10% to cause a horrible, bloody revolution.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple other questions, then we got to run here. Tucker is now on X, am I right? And
yeah, although
Go ahead. Although what?
Oh, he's still an employee of Fox News. He's still getting a paycheck every week. So his contract doesn't end until December 2024, right after the next presidential election. But he's on X because, from what I told, Fox failed to include Twitter in their non-compete, which is why he's able to be there.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Are there limits to free speech now?
It seems like it. I mean, what's happening with Twitter X has been really encouraging with Elon Musk. But then again, we're still in that situation though. It's a lot of power for one man to have. And it's great what he's done so far. It's been impressive, but at the same time, we're still looking at, one guy who's controlling the platform that all politicians and media people use. I mean, certainly Tucker's there because he's made it more attractive. I mean, it's much better than the last guy, but
right.
We're still seeing, it's still frightening what's happening to speech in this country.
Some people say there is a red wave happening in America. Do you see it that way?
I don't know, but I'm always wrong about this stuff. I was wrong about the last two presidential elections, so I hope there is, but I don't know. It's so hard to decide what to trust. I don't know if I trust any of these polls or what.
What a mess! And there's something called confirmation bias. What is that, and does Tucker have it?
Confirmation bias. So that's when you have an idea about something and then you purposely sort of see things that validate that idea in the world. I don't know. I guess maybe we all have that to an extent, but if you're digging into something, I don't know how Tucker thinks the next election is going to go. I know that he says he's supporting Trump for the main reason that it's, this election's a referendum on whether or not we want the government to legally go after its political opponents. And, if you don't want that to be the culture, you have to vote for Trump. And I personally agree with that.
Yeah.
So, I'm not sure how he thinks it's going to go. But, he's also someone that has predicted wrongly about elections before and admitted that he was wrong.
Yeah. I am definitely supporting the Great White Hope. You know who the Great White Hope is, right?
Is that Donald Trump?
All the way. So, one last thing about Tucker, and then I gotta go. Is there, I don't know how much you know about Donald Trump, but is there a similarity between the personality of Tucker and that of Donald Trump?
Well, I think their biggest similarity is the fact that they're both class traders, Tucker came from the media elite beltway, Washington, D.C., lived in the same neighborhood as the Bidens and Dr. Fauci, and he became a class trader. And that's why I think they hate him so much. And same with Donald Trump. He's from the donor class. There's that famous line in 2016. I think they were at a debate or something with Hillary Clinton. And somebody had said, if you hate Hillary Clinton so much, they said to Donald Trump, then why was she invited to your daughter's wedding? And Trump said, because I paid her to be there. And that was just lifting the covers on everything. And Tucker's very similar. They're two people who come from this world and they know exactly how it works and they've come out against it. And that's one of the reasons why they're so despised. I think that's really kind of the strongest similarity between the two of them. They're both really funny people. I think both of them, Tucker and Trump, both have a great joy of life. They're fun-loving people. They have great senses of humor. That's another one where I would see a similarity.
Was Tucker liberal at any point?
No, he was very kind of a beltway conservative guy. He was very pro-Iraq war. He supported George W. Bush, but then had a big turn in 2003. He went to Iraq to report for Esquire, and that's when he kind of turned against the sort of neoconservative movement. But he always grew up this kind of civil libertarian, this kind of, live and let live guy who kind of then was into beltway politics more. And then since has become much more of a populist and, wants to stand up for the people he thinks are being walked all over by the media and the political elite class.
Well, I'll tell you this, man. He is definitely a wise and interesting person. And I love people who are wise and interesting and who is not afraid to stand up on their own 2 feet and deal with life and don't whine about it. But it reminds me of the good old days when boys were boys and men were men. And I am 100% convinced if we have more men who were willing to stand up and just be what you got to be, that we can turn America around overnight. The men are not as strong as they were at one time. This is an amazing book. I love books like this. I highly recommend Tucker. How can people get it?
You go to tuckerthebook.com. There's a bunch of links there. You can also buy direct from the publisher there, or you can go anywhere you get your books. So Amazon, Books A Million, Barnes & Noble, Walmart, Sam's Club, they should all have it.
It is easy to read and everything. Last thing, man, were you surprised at how amazing the book was? Became once you were done?
I guess with him getting fired was, it shocked all of us, or a show being taken off the air. So, I think I was kind of amazed that we pushed back publication. I interviewed him a few more times after his show was taken off the air.
Yeah.
And I guess I was kind of amazed that the book ends with the new beginning. It ends with the April 24th, 2023, when it was taken off the air, kind of feels like the end of the Tucker Carlson origin story. It wasn't when he got to Fox and became number one. So I was sort of amazed with that. We were thinking, what are we going to do now with this book? And I just thought, well, no, this is the origin story. It ended when he got taken off the air.
Yeah.
So that was kind of an amazing coincidence. And I think the best endings are new beginnings.
I am black and slow, and I don't like reading a lot. But when I find books like this, I can't put them down. And just because it's like dealing with real life. It's about real people. It's about how they were able to overcome and are able to overcome situations. And so I am greatly inspired by these types of books and people's stories. Chadwick Moore, thank you so much, man, and I really wish you well with this book, and thank you for coming on again. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much.
All right. Is there any other information you want to give out about yourself before we go, like how people can get you or anything?
You can find me on X, just Chadwick_Moore, or again, you go to tuckerthebook.com, or anywhere you get your books should be there.
Chadwick Moore, thank you so much, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Amazing.